Welcome to New York. I've never done a video about a city before, but this is my #1 city in the world for game and my by far #1 city in the world for learning game. It's also a city I've lived in for extensive periods of time myself, so I have an intimate knowledge of how to game and how to date in this city. And I'm going to show you how to do it the right way because I know a lot of people struggle here. So without further ado, this is how to date in New York City. Your first key decision for successful dating in New York, which is actually going to be one of your first decisions when coming here anyway, is where to live. And yes, this does matter quite a bit. It matters for taking girls home, but it really matters when it comes to dating. It's going to be very easy to get girls to come to Manhattan and especially lower Manhattan, whereas it's going to be very hard to get girls from Manhattan to come to the outer boroughs like Queens, Long Island, the Bronx, etc. Living in a central location is absolutely incredibly useful for getting girls to actually show up for dates. If you live in one of the outer boroughs, you're oftentimes going to need to go to her for the date, which then makes it harder to take her home and other things like that. It gives you less control over the logistics. Also, of course, being closer to the best bars to go out in makes it a much easier journey from that bar to your house, which will also significantly impact your results. So the ideal areas to live, in my opinion, are on Manhattan, below about 60th Street or so, all the way down to Financial District, and the lower point is all fine. And I will give you, if you go into Brooklyn as far as Williamsburg, that's probably okay, although I personally would still prefer Manhattan because it just is harder to get people to go across the bridge out of Manhattan than to go across the bridge into Manhattan. But lower Manhattan and possibly Williamsburg are the areas I would live, and I would pay a premium to do it. In fact, when I've lived in New York, I have lived in Midtown or in Chelsea the times that I've lived here. And when I come and stay in New York, I usually stay in Lower East Side or Chelsea. Now, obviously, if you can have your own place, that is nice. But if I had a choice between my own place in a less good area logistically versus having roommates and even having a way shittier place in a good location, for specifically dating reasons, I would absolutely choose the small, cramped, shitty place in the good location. The logistics are that important. And also, when it comes to girls coming back to your place, the very fact that it is in Manhattan will impress them enough in many cases. In fact, on many occasions, I've brought a girl back to a shitty, dumpy place that I happened to be staying in Manhattan, and the girl was just impressed that I was in Manhattan at all. On the subject of roommates, if you have any choice in the matter, I would go out of my way to try and get cool social roommates, and at a very bare minimum, make damn sure you get roommates that are going to be okay with bringing girls back. It'll be a horrific situation if every single time you bring a girl back, it's a fight with your roommate, or worst case, if you get a roommate who's angry and actively sabotaging you when you bring girls back. That is truly, truly awful. So do select your roommates well. And actually, what I highly recommend, if you possibly can, find a wingman and room with him. Having a wingman who you are helping to get laid and he's helping you to get laid is some of the most fun you will have in your entire life. Beyond simply what area you live in, it matters quite a bit what is around you. It's a really good idea to be near some good bars that you can use for dates or as intermediate venues when bringing a girl home. So for example, if you're bringing a girl from a nightclub, you say, I know another place you can get a drink. It happens to be a bar next to your house. They bring her from there back to your house. Can be very, very easy. Of course, a lot of times you'll bring her straight home, but it's nice to have that backup. Beyond that, if there are other interesting venues near your house, it's great. If there's a great park you can take walks in or meet girls in, that's an incredible asset. The amenities of your apartment also matter a good deal. If you have a rooftop or a big open area that you can bring a girl to, that is a huge asset in New York City. In fact, a rooftop is a huge status symbol in this city. So for example, at one of the apartments I lived in New York, we had on one side a liquor store, on the other side a bar, on the other side, back by liquor store, another bar, and then we had a rooftop that we could go up to and hang out on. And with all those different things to do, there were plenty of reasons to bring the girl back and plenty of ways to bring the girl up into the apartment that were not necessarily just about going to my specific apartment. So in summary, where you live matters. Ideally, you want to be in Manhattan or maybe Williamsburg, but really ideally Manhattan. And the area around and inside your apartment building also matter quite a bit. The next key question for your dating success in New York would be, what is your strategy? What type of game are you going to do? Are you going to do day game, night game, or online game? And the great thing about New York is it's one of the few cities where all of them are incredible. So I actually recommend that to some extent you do all of them. But since we're here in a park, let's start with day game. If you just walk around the city, you'll see hot girls all over the place. However, a lot of times they won't be in the easiest positions to open. A lot of them will be walking in the street, some will have headphones in, some will be in very crowded areas where it's hard to even get access to them. You by all means can and should do those approaches. But if you're going to try and specifically do day game and you want to be as time efficient as possible, I would recommend going to venues that are a little more game friendly if possible. And my number one place to do game in New York City is in parks. Central Park is actually okay for game. A lot of the other parks I think are better. Washington Square Park, Bryant Park, Madison Square Park, Union Square Park. All of those are actually great places for game. And actually, which of those is the best tends to cycle and fluctuate over time. One will be better for a while and then another one will be better. But those types of places are great because people in Manhattan, they want to take a break, they want to be around a little bit of nature, and when they are in the park, they're relaxed, they're happy, and they're not going anywhere. And also, girls will oftentimes even go to the park alone. So you have a hot girl sitting alone with nothing to do. That is truly an opportune situation to start a conversation. And the point I'm about to make right now relates to all types of game, not just day game, but it is particular to day game, which is that people in New York are a bit more social when they're out than in a lot of other cities. And the reason for that is that a lot of people moved here. A lot of people are new in the city or don't have entrenched social circles or entrenched friendships of decades and decades. For example, the city where I grew up, a lot of people that are there have lived there their entire life. Whereas when I moved to New York, a lot of people have been here for a few months or a few years or even a few weeks, and they're actively trying to meet people and actively looking to be social. So it's a different kind of environment where actually a lot of times people are more receptive to talking than you might think. Even beyond New York just being a social city in general, if someone's out in a park, they've come out to be among people. If someone wanted to be alone and didn't want to talk to anyone, they'd be at home in their apartment. Just keep that in mind. Now, while parks are my favorite place to meet girls during the daytime, the actual best place to meet them is everywhere, wherever you are. If you're at a coffee shop and there's a cute girl, by all means say hi. If you're on the street and you see a cute girl, by all means at least say hi and give it a shot. New York is an enormous city. There are tons of people here, and one of the things that makes it the greatest for learning game is that you essentially have an unlimited supply of strangers to talk to. If you talk to a girl and it goes well, that's amazing. If you talk to a girl and it doesn't go well, it will soon be forgotten. You'll probably never see her again. As far as what to do when you do meet girls during the daytime, there are really two strategies. One that I used to do a lot when I was younger living in the city, one that I do now more that I'm a bit older, and to be fair, now that I'm a little better with my skills with women. When I was younger, what I would do is I would do a ton of approaches and I would take a lot of numbers. Some of them would be numbers after 2 and 3 minute interactions even, some would be after longer interactions, and I would just fill my phone with number, and I would follow up and go on dates. And I went on lots of dates and I dated tons of girls that way. It was a very, very effective strategy. As I've gotten older, I've shifted more to a strategy where I want to have longer, more sort of connected and deep conversations with girls. And I want to either take them on a date right then and there, or I want to put in the time to make sure that when I do get a phone number, it's actually a solid phone number where the girl has a strong interest in going on a date with me. As I've gotten older, I just find I have less energy to follow up on tons and tons of potentially weak leads. I'd rather have some good, solid leads where I really know the girl and know that I like the girl and follow up with those. But either strategy is totally good and totally effective. And in terms of insta-dating, which is taking a girl on a date right when you meet her, that's actually very easy in the city because there are so many good things that are walkable wherever you go. Wherever you are, there's a coffee shop, a bar, an ice cream place, and a restaurant within a couple blocks walk. To end the day game section, I just want to emphasize that this is my favorite day game city in the world, at least during the warm months, because there are so many attractive women out just waiting to be talked to. Next up, let's talk about night game. And by night game, I mean basically anytime you're going to a bar, a club, a party, a social event, a gathering, once the sun has gone down and meeting girls. And aside from being basically the best day game city in the world, especially during the warm months, New York is one of the best night game cities, and it's absolutely the single best night game city for taking girls home the same day you meet them. And the reason for that has a little bit to do with the venues, but it mainly has to do with the city itself and the way people get around. New York is a lot of people in a very, very small area where people don't typically drive very much. They use the subways, they use taxis, they use Ubers, which means that when girls come out, they oftentimes come out separately and meet somewhere, and then they leave separately, as opposed to other cities where they're driving each other home and leaving with their friends. So what that means is it's not at all uncommon for a girl to be going home alone, and if she's going home alone anyway, going home alone with you isn't that big of a stretch. It also means if she wants to go home with you without it being awkward or embarrassing that she left her friends, there are a lot of ways for that to happen. So that's the main reason why I found it's easier to take girls home from bars in New York than literally anywhere else on the planet, even including vacation cities like Barcelona and Las Vegas. When it comes to where to go out in New York nightlife, the individual venues will change. So if I were to give you venues, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, this would be out of date anyway. But the categories of venues stay the same and have lasted for decades. And basically, there are 3 tiers of New York nightlife. There's basic tier general admission level, there's semi-exclusive, and then there's very, very high end. And I want to talk about all 3 tiers and what's good about all 3 and how you might want to utilize all of them. Let's talk low tier first, because it's completely accessible to everybody. And actually, low tier nightlife in New York is absolutely great. Why? Because there are just so many people out that even if you go to a bar and on average the people are not that hot, it's almost guaranteed if you just go to some bars, you're gonna find hot girls. On volume, you cannot not find hot girls in the city. Also, the demographic of the city actually really lends itself to low tier bars or bars where there's not a particular cover or bouncer or anything like that. Because there are a lot of attractive young single people out, it's not hard to find them and it's not hard to find bars full of them. Also, there are a lot of people in New York who work very hard at their job, and so they're not like professional partygoers. They don't go drink all the time. They go drink occasionally, and so they don't have the time or the energy to go find the best place or know a bouncer or know a promoter. They're just going out with their friends for a drink after work or just going out for fun, and they may end up anywhere. They end up wherever their friends drag them to. So it's not uncommon you find the absolute stunning girl that was dragged out by her work buddies to a total dive bar. The other great thing about this bottom tier of night game is that you can go out without planning ahead. If you want to go out at 1 in the morning, you can go to a lot of venues, have barely a line, walk straight in, and have eligible girls there. One of my personal favorite things to do in New York nightlife, which may actually surprise you quite a bit, is if I'm alone and not with a bunch of students, I like to actually go to some of these dive bars and just bar hop. I like to just walk in, look around, and see who's there. And if there's some hot girls there who I want to talk to, I'll go do it. If not, I'll just bounce to the next place. And I love to do this even midweek when it's even quieter. Because when you meet a hot girl out at a dive bar midweek, she basically has nothing to do that's anywhere near as interesting as talk to you. If she's out midweek, she wanted to go out, she wants to party, she wants to meet people, and she doesn't really have a plan for what to do next. It's very, very easy under the circumstance to meet her, take her to another bar, and oftentimes even take her home. And as you get better and better at game, you don't actually need a million girls to talk to in a given night. You just need that one hot girl that you can have a great conversation with and a great interaction with. As I mentioned in day game, where I said at a young age I used to try and go out and get a whole bunch of numbers, as I've gotten older, in night game, I much prefer to just find that one hot girl and do a long interaction, perhaps take her home, or have it be a situation where at the end of the night, she can't wait to see me the next time. Next up, let's talk about high-end nightlife, because New York has some of the most exclusive nightclubs in the world. And yes, these are a bit harder to get access to. You need to know a promoter, know a bouncer, or pay some money. But if you do go to them, some of the hottest women on the planet have been gathered together in one place for you. And oftentimes, the very fact that you're there conveys to them that you are somebody and you have status, so it may actually be easier to talk to them than it would be in other settings. So this can be a huge benefit, and it can make your game tremendously easier, especially the value aspect of game, the aspect of the girl believing you have value. The other benefit of these high-end clubs is they do take care of their ratio. They try and make sure there is a good number of women to men in the club to make it a good party. However, there are 2 main drawbacks of the high-end nightlife. The first is it's kind of hard to get access to. It's either gonna be very expensive or you have to do a little bit of homework. But if you wanna get access to this without paying a lot of money, here are some tips. Number 1, meet girls who go to these clubs and go with them. Oftentimes, if you're with a group of girls, you get in as a guy, ride along with them, and you get in for free. Next up, meet promoters and meet door guys. Those are the people that will be responsible for your access. If you become friends with a promoter, you bring some girls to him and help him out, he will be very happy to bring you in and have you at his table. And as far as getting to know the door guys, it can be a little bit dicey, but if you do go to these clubs from time to time, talk to them on the way in, get to know them, find out some things about them, get to know the doorman's name. Those things can help to facilitate the process of getting in more easily. And by the way, New York City doormen, especially at the high-end clubs, do have a bit of a reputation for being not the kindest people to you all the time. But don't take it personally if you get rejected from time to time. It comes with the territory. Over time, you'll get better at it. Over time, you'll get to know them. And be glad that they are exclusive, and be glad they do reject a lot of guys, because that's what makes the ratio inside the club good. The other unfortunate downside with some of these exclusive clubs has to do with the layout of the club. They tend to make a lot of their money from bottle service, which is kind of cool if you have a table and a bottle. But even then, what can happen is there's just less mingling. It's a little harder to meet random people in the club because they're associated with a table. However, there are some high-end clubs that still have a lot of mingling going on, and those are some of my absolute favorite venues in the world. Finally, we have my personal favorite category of New York nightlife, which is the upper mid-tier, sort of semi-exclusive club. And this is the kind of club where if you go there as a guy by yourself, you're likely to get a little bit of flack from the doorman. They're likely to say, oh, private party, or we don't let, single men in, or something like that. And that's actually a good thing, because it means, once again, that the ratio of men to women inside isn't horrendously against you. It also means that a lot of the loser guys are kept out, so girls go there, have a good time, it gets a good reputation, and the hot girls keep coming back. So while you do need to be a little entitled, you need to learn how to deal with the doorman, it's not quite so impossible or expensive as it can be at some of the upper tier clubs. So you can get in, especially if you build a good reputation with the doorman, which isn't that hard to do. And once you're in, the crowd is consistently good. There are hot girls there on a regular basis. Also, because it is a little exclusive, girls feel a little more special being there. So you get a little more of an aspirational kind of girl who kind of thinks she's something. And those girls tend to be hotter and more successful on average than the typical girl. So why do I like these venues? Well, they kind of tend to be the best of both worlds. They have, similar to the just lower tier venues, that there is a decently sized crowd there, so there's a lot of girls to talk to. There tends to be more mingling and less bottle service, table service type stuff going on, but the girls on average are hotter. And as similar to the higher tier venues, it is a bit more of an exclusive crowd. Girls dress up more, and they're thinking of it more as a big night. And so they're more in a party mode than they might be if they just went down to the pub for a drink with their girls. One final note on New York nightlife: whenever it's warm out, rooftops in New York are insane. That is my absolute favorite type of venue, is the rooftop venue, because there's something about just being in the open air that just feels good and feels freeing when the weather's nice. It also keeps the volume of the music down a bit so that you can have a conversation a bit better. One other problem with a lot of clubs, especially some of the high-end clubs, is they can be very, very loud and hard to talk in. Being outdoors, being on a rooftop tends to mitigate that quite a bit. And I know a lot of you are just dying for me to give out the specific venues I like to go to the most. And I'm not going to do that for two reasons. One, like I mentioned, it will turn over quickly and it'll change. But secondly, if I tell you the venues I like to go to, next time I go out, there's going to be 40 people following around and be like, Todd, I saw you online. So I can't really do that. But if you are in New York or you know some good venues, you want to share the wealth, go ahead and post below and let people know where are the good venues currently. And last but not least, I want to give you one final tip for New York nightlife. Stay out late. I know it might ruin your work schedule in the morning, but here's why. New York stays open till 4 a.m. and New York is a super chaotic place. And as the night goes on, more and more girls are in a mood to go home with a guy, and more girls are less and less obligated to their friends because their friends got tired and went home, their friends met a guy and went home. Whatever reason, at the end of the night, there are tons of hot girls who are still out, still alone, still single. If you're there at 4 in the morning, you will be the recipient of a lot of fortune coming your way. Realistically, after doing this for decades, I usually am not out by 4 a.m. because I've usually already left with a girl by then if I'm trying to. But I can tell you over the years, I have tons of insane, epic stories of what has happened late at night, at the end of the night at a bar, or even at a late night diner after going out. And this applies to my boot camps as well. I can't even count how many students end up with a girl out of the chaos at the end of the night. The third amazing form of dating in New York, online dating. New York is, as far as I know, the single best city for online dating as well, and here's why. There are simply more single available women in the city than anywhere else on the planet. And in fact, the ratio of women to men in the city is actually in your favor, which is very different than a lot of places. Even beyond that, the demographic of women in this city is particularly well catered to online dating. Because online dating is particularly useful for career-oriented women that don't have the time to go out a lot, or who are trying to be healthy and not drink and have a good lifestyle. And that's very much the case with a lot of the ambitious New Yorkers. So essentially, my online dating advice for New York City, you should do it. As far as strategies for online dating, it's basically the same as it would be anywhere else, except way, way easier. As far as specific advice for how to do well in online dating, there's a ton of that all over my channel and also my course, Online Dating Academy, and it's not really that different for New York. My current favorite site for New York is Hinge, but that's subject to change over time, so I would suggest test out the various sites. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with being on all the sites, so you don't have to be loyal to just one. As far as downsides to online dating, if you do it in an intelligent way, there aren't really very many, but if you do it wrong, it could be very time-consuming. You could waste a lot of time with it. The other downside potentially is a lot of times the girls don't look like their photos, and as you get better at game, you may find that the girls you meet in day game and night game are of a higher quality in terms of physical appearance than what you'll meet from online dating. So in short, my advice for online dating, you absolutely should do it, but you should consider it a bonus round. You should not make it your entire dating strategy. So we've talked about day game, night game, online game, that's the big three, but we're still missing the most traditional way in history to meet girls, which is social circle game. Meeting them through your friends or meeting them through the activities you do. And as with all the others, in New York, you're in a better position for this than just about anywhere else. Some great ideas to go meet women: join a yoga or Pilates class, or better yet, join a social dance class like a salsa night. There will be tons of hot women there. Also, if you are young and go out, it's likely you have friends that are young and are going out, and they have friends that are younger going out. Network. Meet girls through the friends of your friends. When you meet girls that way, there's comfort and familiarity already built in, and even some value even before you meet the girls. So go out a lot, lead a rich social life, and the nice thing about the city is whatever esoteric thing you like to do, there is a club and an organization for it, and there will be at least some women somehow connected to that organization. So this is clearly not as direct of a way to meet women as day game, night game, or online game would be, and overall you may not meet as many women this way, but you also want to have a life and have fun. So if you don't take advantage of this as you're out and about in the city and as you are with your friends, you're just wasting opportunity. Also, when you do meet girls through your social circle, it's a bit more likely you may have more things in common, so you may actually be a little more compatible for a relationship on average. Which brings me to the actual relationship. And I'm not going to go into a crazy amount of depth on every detail of how to have a good relationship because I have an entire channel full of videos that address that, but I do want to talk about what's particular to New York. And the thing about New York is this: because there are so many young, attractive women, because there are so many people going out, it's a very easy city to hook up in. Also, for this reason, there's a very open attitude towards hooking up and a bit of a hookup culture. So it's actually fairly easy to hook up with a lot of girls, even date a lot of girls kind of at the same time. But if and when you decide you want to get more serious, you want to settle down, I would strongly encourage that you don't just think about who is the hottest girl you're sleeping with or who is the girl who seems the most high status. I really, really suggest you think about whose lifestyle is the most compatible with yours. And you should start screening for not just who is the hottest girl, but actually who is the best relationship for you. Try and think ahead. What are a few of the things you really want from a woman in your life? And what are a few of the things you really like to do? And actively screen for girls that are into that, because it's just going to make for a healthier and happier relationship overall. So that's the video. If you live in New York, I hope it's helpful. If you don't, I suggest you come visit. It's an amazing place to do game, an amazing place to learn game. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.